Hello everyone. I hope everyone is having a wonderful evening. Um, Today we are going to talk about a fair few things. Um, so I've had an interesting week, and I thought I'd start off with telling you that I have been working a lot more than what I planned, and downtime is a bit of a struggle at the moment. So, any extra moment, I'm researching things for you guys and uh, put on the back burner pretty much everything else. The house is kept up, but here and there. Okay, on today's show, we're going to talk about a deportation looming for one gentleman. And this is going to be an important topic because I believe that we do need to do something about our appalling immigration history and looking into how we treat people, particularly from our closest neighbours like New Zealand. Twiggy Forest is being investigated. SCOMO's fan club is dwindling at a rapid pace, even on his own home front. Turns out that he was never that popular to begin with, but even those very few friends are falling away. The no vote link. Let me start that again. The vote no link. What does that mean? There is a ROBODEBT suspension. Government documents for profit. Who benefited and why is there no move to reprimand this particular company? Com Games, why were they pulled out from, and what is the angle that is being perpetrated by the media? Susan Lee had an appearance this morning on Insiders. If you were able to tolerate David Spears and his Sky News way of presenting it, you'd understand that he'll ask every once in a while a question that you have to air because makes a good point, but it's few and far between. So if you're wondering why I don't do much of Insiders, that's it. Boris Johnson has a new neighbour and is letting him know how unhappy he is with Boris Johnson's legacy. Okay, that starts everything off. Let's start with this deportation. A terminally ill man from New Zealand with a slight criminal record. Robert Taylor. He has a slight conviction held against him. He was originally born in New Zealand. But he's lived here for, what did they say it was? I'm no good at numbers, so from a terminally ill 50-year-old man who has lived in Western Australia for more than 4 decades. So he came here when he was 10 years old. So this guy comes from New Zealand. He's been here for more than 4 decades. He's 50. And now they want to deport him back to New Zealand, a place where he doesn't know, and when all of his family is here. No, United Kingdom. I'm sorry, I get that wrong. With his family in 1974. So this guy is a little bit older than me, but he was raised here essentially from the age of 10. And then they're just going to be like, no, you've had a slight conviction. Because he's never became an Australian citizen after being convicted of aggravated burglary in 2019 and sentenced to 3.5 years in prison, his visa was cancelled. While I do not undermine the crime that he did, there is a way that he has paid for that crime like any other criminal. And I don't think deportation is the answer to that. Now, why don't I think that he should be deported? For a few reasons. Our criminal system isn't designed to give this level of, and he's terminally ill. It's not as if he's going to be, you know, going to do more of this sort of stuff whilst he's on his deathbed, essentially. And he does have a family, so he doesn't have much time left. And our immigration policy is appalling. We don't have a good immigration system. And no, I'm not out there trying to fawn over a guy who committed B&E. It's not that. It's that he has been here longer than I've even been alive. How do we treat someone so appallingly where he's been here since he was 10 and now we're like, hey, no, you can just go back to wherever you came from because you weren't born here. I would say he's just as much of an Aussie as me. Not being born here is not, and it's not as if he committed the ultimate sin. I'm not Christian or anything, but there's one thing I don't particularly like, and that's harm to children or women. And he hasn't done that. But B&E is a very serious crime, breaking and entering. And I believe that his 3.5 years in prison and stuff like that was already punishment enough. Re-punishing him when he's terminally ill and he has children here and a family is beyond the pale. I believe the Labor Party should intervene. Let this man live out his last days with his kids and his wife. I mean, truly, this is an appalling situation. No one is the winner here. It's not as if I'm saying everyone who commits burglaries should be just, you know, out there with the fairies, you know, and that this is a normal action. It's not. No one should commit a crime like this. But again, that's a whole nother debate. That doesn't mean that you need to deport him. You can tell me in the comments of how terrible you think my idea is and whatever else. But I believe that he did pay the price for this. And if you serve more than 12 months in jail, apparently that means that you get deported to a place that you haven't known since you were 10 years old. I doubt that this gentleman could even, in a terminally ill state, really even travel. I couldn't imagine it being easy to travel ordinarily to a place that you don't know, let alone in a place that you haven't been in since you were 10. I personally think that's a fail, but, you know, that's me. So I'm going to be calling my local member of parliament to have a discussion about why I think that's a bad idea. Let me know in the comments if you do think that I'm being ridiculous, because I've heard both sides of this argument from family and I did not come out the victor. It turns out that I'm a little bit lenient on criminals. And I didn't like how that made me feel. So if you want to tell me the same thing and agree with my family, or if they're just argumentative with me, let me know, you know. Yeah. Or if you actually do agree with me, let me know. Okay. I'd just love to hear from you all. So it turns out Forrest Twiggy is being investigated. Turns out his company is looking into him. For a guy this powerful, you would think that he'd get away with anything. But it turns out Fortescue Metals and a few other things is not enough to take away the impropriety nature of his actions. Okay, so here we are. There was an anonymous letter to Fortescue Metals given. Now, this is of a personal nature. His marriage has essentially taken a hit to it. Fortescue Metals engaged a law firm to investigate the behaviour of Executive Chairman Andrew Forrest after receiving an anonymous letter. They concluded that none of the matters in the letter were sustained substantiated and that there were no adverse findings. A Fortescue Metals spokesman told AAP. The statement did not disclose the nature of the allegations. The Australian Financial Review reported on Sunday that the investigation involved whether Dr. Forrest had a relationship with a Fortescue employee. Dr. Forrest, I don't know what, and his wife Nicola Forrest announced on Thursday that they had decided to separate after 31 years of marriage. Now that's a blow. I don't like the guy. I think the cash, the welfare card and everything else that he has tried to implement, he's an evil SOB. Right? But in his personal life, I don't want to delve into what that means. 31 years of marriage, it's got to do a toll on you. I've been married 23 years and I'm 40. So I've spent my whole entire life with one person, my whole entire adult life. And I couldn't picture a moment without him in it. So he must be feeling the pressure of that. But that's it. Fortescue said that it selected Seafair Shaw to investigate because a law firm had demonstrated expertise in investigations of this nature and were independent of having never previously represented Dr. Forrest. The law firm's legal fees weren't contingent on any particular finding or outcome and provided full access to the electronic records and documents and employees and information contact of a forensic review. Now, I am not saying that this is a normal way of doing things. Companies like him engage in this sort of level all the time. But if this is to be believed, this is like a 3-degree separation from him directly. So if they did find that there was no action to be taken, I do believe them. But keep in mind that there is a reason for rules like this. This type of power leverage of boss or an employee, it exists for a reason. He's in a position of power and it can change the dynamic of the whole workplace. For instance, it can change the influence of positions that he can take. So there are good reasons for these positions. However, the heart does not know the difference between who's an employee and who is, the standard person on the street at times. So, with very depressing moments like this, I will say this: it is horrendous for his family that if he did do it, that they are enduring negligence at his hands. Yeah. Okay, turns out Scott Morrison's fan club is an issue. An already dwindling fan club is speaking out. There are calls for him to resign, but not just resign, but to be accountable for the ROBODEBT saga. I do not dispute that there shouldn't be accountability for it. But it took this very explosive set of documents and files and evidence along with testimony to have them arrive at this moment. I believe it also gives them an opportunity to discuss who leads the Liberal Party, because clearly Peter Dutton is not the best choice to do that. Not as if I'm saying I know a better Liberal or whatever, because to me, they're all appalling. But needless to say that this means also that there's no opportunity for them to change about what he's doing. I had to take my glasses off because it was hurting. I've got to get them readjusted. It was hurting the side of my head. We'll see if I can read perfectly well without them. Okay, so in saying that, no, it's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to read it. I think that this is going to be an issue ongoing. Okay. For Scott Morrison, there's going to be louder calls. He was supposed to have a job in the UK to go to or something, or the US. He's trying to line up something before he dips out. I don't mind if someone's trying to get a new job before the old one leaves. But the problem is this is a guy that's currently on holidays after the ROBODEBT saga was all revealed. He's in the middle of Greece. So he's not even sitting in Parliament like he should. He's not even doing the job that he should do. So it's time for him to go. And I believe that he should be put into jail for what he did. Because they threatened jail to anyone that owed money, even though they knew it wasn't legal to ask. So that's where we're at. Okay. So there's been a ROBODEBT suspension. Okay, where is it? Here we go. After the ROBODEBT findings, the public servant who oversaw the unlawful ROBODEBT scheme has been stood down from her position. Department of Defence, following a Royal Commission report. Catherine Campbell, who was previously the head of the Department of Human Services, was involuntarily stood down from her advisory role at Defence 10 days ago. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, confirmed on Thursday that the decision to suspend her was made by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet appropriate bodies. So Albo took it upon himself to take this appropriate action. Which, yep, I believe in suspending her without pay was great, but I believe firing her would have been better. But that's my opinion. In the wake of the Royal Commission, but there's still an outstanding issue of her being parachuted from an $892,000 role. And considering the Integrity Commission referral, Campbell was made an advisor to the AUKUS Security Partnership in June last year with a salary of $900,000 a year. She was singled out in a Royal Commission report on ROBODEBT. The Commission found that Campbell gave misleading evidence to the Cabinet about ROBODEBT, but stayed silent because of the Minister, Scott Morrison, wanted to pursue the scheme, and the government wouldn't be able to achieve its forecast budget savings without it. While the Commission said that Ms. Campbell was likely to mislead because it contained no reference to income averaging or the need for the legislative change, she said it was an oversight. However, the Commission said that such claims were extraordinary for someone of her experience. Mr. Albanese said that the Royal Commission had identified failings within the public service and that there was a need to respond. Most people look at the human tragedy that was caused by ROBODEBT, and the findings of the Royal Commission are very, very clear about the failings of the Morrison government. And indeed are going back when Scott Morrison was the minister. He told ABC on Thursday. Mr. Albanese did not say if Ms. Campbell's suspension would be permanent. He said the government would respond in an appropriate way to the findings of the Royal Commission, which were more damning than anyone was expecting. Green Social Service spokesman Janet Rice said Campbell's suspension was a welcome step, but shouldn't end there. Those responsible for the brutal and illegal scheme, including Scott Morrison, must be held accountable too. The harm and the trauma and the deaths could have been avoided if not for the inhumane and lack of accountability from the former Prime Minister Morrison on down, including senior departmental officials like Ms. Campbell. And that come from the AAP. Okay, so that's where we are at. Understand that this is one of many that need to be held accountable. Scott Morrison does need to be held accountable. There isn't even a doubt in my mind that that is an appropriate action. So here we are to talk about, oh, that didn't work right. As I'm going, I'm linking everything up, and I'm my own producer today. We're going to discuss the vote no link to Conservatives and exactly what their role is. Turns out that a lot of church people that are meant to be all forgiving and nice and generous people aren't so much when it comes to racial issues or a lot of fairness and equality. It turns out that they like to strip a lot of women of rights and be racist, bad people. This isn't to say all church organizations operate this way, but there are a few ultra-conservative ones that have drawn my attention to being how despicable they are. So it has been linked to a lot of politicians like Stuart Roberts, and that was part of the government. He did resign. And the whole LNP coalition government. They are taking this weird approach with the vote no because they believe that that should be, because conservatives have always thought subhuman levels of women and racial minorities. And they don't even like hide it anymore. It's so abhorrent. And there's a lot of money being flowed through to these vote no campaigners that we do need something to counteract that particular action. If we let things go the way they are, it will have devastating effects for everyone involved. Do not think that this is something that can be quietly attacked. We have to go in just as hard as they're going in on the no vote. And there's a lot of misinformation and atrocious behavior in the middle of that. So understand that I do want that tackled. Okay. Government documents for profit. Turns out Deloitte has a problem. Senator calls for Deloitte to face fresh grilling over claims ex-partner David Marlowe shared military documents. So what happened here? Turns out that they used military documents illegally to help out the private sector of Deloitte. Now, the reason that this is going to be an issue is not only is this super illegal, but there's no accountability for it either. So let's take a look at this and break it down. Okay. A federal senator, let's start that again. Apologies. A federal senator reports that former Deloitte partner leaking confidential defense documents to demonstrate the threat consulting firms pose to Australia. Former Deloitte consultant David Marlowe used confidential government documents to try and win work for new consulting firm Synergy 360, which is another LNP. Amazing ability to have rorts involved and illegal activity like PwC. It's amazing. We're going to talk about PwC in a minute, which is another one. In late 2018, after leaving Deloitte, Mr. Mueller reportedly sent private military documents to Synergy 360 colleagues, who were trying to win major military contracts at the time. Meanwhile, they try and lock up Richard Boyle and keep Julian Assange where he is. Meanwhile, these were people that were trying to do the right things. This guy did something super illegal. There's no criminal investigation in what he's done at all. There's no big AFB investigation, no nothing. We're just hearing in Senate estimates that he may have done something super illegal. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That is outrageous. What he did was he's a national security threat. Not only should he face real jail time for something like this, but he could have leaked this to not only this firm that he tried to move with, Synergy 360, but he may have tendered it out to others. We need to know how far this net goes. And was it just him that was looking for a new position from Synergy 360 from Synergy 360 to Deloitte? So this is going to be a problem. We need to know how illegal this whole thing was. And it appears shortly before he left the firm, David Milo transferred information from his email to his personal email and had no knowledge of the activity nor the emails, the statement read. Yeah, right. And Deloitte had no knowledge of that. Right, because they don't know when information is being copied and shared. Snapchat does, but big government documents, you know, they wouldn't have protections for stuff like that. Why would they? Unbelievable. Commonwealth Games rejection. Now, there's a lot of talk and speculation about why it was done. There was a PwC contract which has come up a lot that was involved in ROBODEBT and a few other things. Turns out that they were also involved in the execution of the Commonwealth Games. The reason that Victoria pulled out wasn't just its links to PwC, but also because the massive cost of the Commonwealth Games, it couldn't be justified in recovering the amount of cost that would be subsequent of the spend. They believe that the economy isn't strong enough to gain all that money back in revenue, and he couldn't justify it. Fair call. But for the papers that didn't want the Commonwealth Games in Victoria are now criticising him for not wanting the games in Victoria. Yeah, don't ask me. They're a weird bunch, the media. They don't even know what they're on about. Another ridiculous thing from the media. Okay, so turns out Susan Lee had an incident on Insiders. What kind of incident? Well, this was today. She was left humiliated when asked, insisting that there's no constitutional risk to the, after insinuating that there's constitutional risk to the voice, but cannot name any expert who agrees with her, going on to suggest that the constitutional experts aren't relevant. So let's have a look at her stupidity. Okay.
You have said here this morning that you do think a voice could help close the gap. So what is the concern about enshrining that in the Constitution?
The way that the unnecessary bureaucracy would be associated with a constitutionally enshrined voice. We've said that's risky. We've said it's unknown. We've said it's divisive, and we've said it's permanent.
Why do you think it's risky? Just explain to me who you're relying on to suggest it would be risky to enshrine this in the Constitution.
Well, when you talk about litigation through the High Court with executive power and the reach and influence of the voice, that to me adds risk. The risk is the slowing down of business decisions.
Are you relying on anyone's advice here? Because there's a long list of Former High Court Chief Justice Robert French, who says there's little or no scope of constitutional litigation. Your Liberal colleague Julian Leeser, who says this is safe change. I mean, experts from Brett Walker to Anne Toomey are all very comfortable with this. Who are you relying on?
There's experts saying lots of different things.
No.
There are experts in the Yes case who said things differently earlier on in the Yes case, and I don't want to name individuals.
Yeah, you don't want to name it because it doesn't exist. It's how they do it.
But in describing the reach and influence of the voice and the way that it would entrench bureaucracy and slow down decision-making, that's what concerns me, because I've seen how decisions in this country have been slowed down to the detriment of local communities.
But that's not the view of most of these experts, the overwhelming majority of constitutional experts.
Well, David, constitutional experts have their place. Ordinary Australians and their views also have their place. And by the way, this is a debate that needs to...
Constitutional experts have their place. I'm telling you what, if they agreed with her, she would say it. But she knows that it's wrong. They have a concern about constitutional issues, but doesn't want to listen to the experts of constitutional issues. This isn't just humiliating. This smacks in the face of everything that's wrong with the LNP. They don't want to listen to the experts. They just want to go with a no campaign. They know that enriching the voice to the country is not a bad thing, but it doesn't matter. The facts don't care about their freaking feelings. Talk about the party of, we don't run by our feelings. Come on, you racist piece of crap. That's all this is. That's all this is. Anytime you hear the no vote, understand that there's racism underlined, and they can use their pretty little symbols of, oh, look, we're worried about the law. No, you're not. You're worried about, actually allowing someone else to have a voice in this country. You racist POS. Are you kidding me? Don't come at me with a so-called articulated debate on the voice, when I know that it all boils down to this. If you have a moment where you really look at it, you're really justifying racism. You're saying, no, why would we give the people who looked after this land long before we're even here in a much more tenable way? Why would we listen to those people? Unbelievably selfish, but this is the LNP in its incredibly racist, incredibly selfish view of it all. It's, you can't ignore how incredibly stupid they are. This is fundamentally why they keep losing. They cannot win on the merits, so they have to go with, my feelings. If not one constitutional expert agrees with her, what do you mean that's a debate? How can you debate on the merits if none of the experts agree with you? This is like NBN and everything else they did with ROBODEBT all over again. They don't listen to the facts. They go by their stupid feelings, and it alienates the public in the process. This is disgraceful.
To be between ordinary Australians.
But when you're talking about constitutional
I'm not lecturing
risk,
anybody.
No, but when you're talking about constitutional risk, as you are, surely you've got to listen to some constitutional experts.
And the reach that the voice would have via the executive power of government and the description of how it would be able to influence every area of government tells me that it would have considerable power. And that power would be...
Why doesn't an expert agree with her? Not one. Not a one. Show me one that agrees with her. And if you want to go with Warren Munding's diatribe of the day, understand that he gets a lot of money to say a lot of stupid things and that he has lost it every single time. And if you want to go with Jacinta Price, understand that a $300 bottle of champagne was enough for her to sell in all of her ideas about the Indigenous people and alcohol. She's fine for alcohol bans that anyone isn't in her realm. She's a disgusting piece of crap. And that, you can't stand there and tell me that this is acceptable. and any other LNP person that implemented it, right up from Scott Morrison to Tony Abbott, they're all pieces of crap. They got no integrity at all. The fact that Tony Abbott implemented that healthy welfare card, that needs an investigation. The fact that Forrest Twiggy was the one that come up with this radical idea to do it. That card shows you how incredibly racist they are. So if you thought that magically that they were going to listen to experts on The Voice, come on. You already knew that they had it in them to be racist people. Look at how they are with immigration. I mean, come on. Were you expecting them to be credible? That's a joke, right?
Risky, divisive, and is unknown. Now, if all of this is going to work well, why hasn't Anthony Albanese called a constitutional convention? Why aren't we having the debate?
What the Uluru dialogues were.
Yeah, he would argue that because that's exactly what it is. The Uluru Statement of the Heart fully backs up that. I mean, it's appalling that we're even having this discussion. All right, last story. Turns out Boris Johnson has a neighbour that is not a fan of Boris Johnson. They normally pick these ultra-conservative areas where everyone agrees with everyone, and they're all little top hats, and they're all little lords and lasses, and they all think that they're all wonderful people. Turns out that there are people with money that totally disregard Boris Johnson. And they're doing little things to let him know just how unhappy they are. What sort of things? Check this out. It's kind of funny. The EU is getting a ribbing from its new neighbours. Our pictures reveal that villagers support Boris Johnson is already flagging just weeks after he moved into his new rural home. They have been poking fun at the man who got Brexit done by raising 3 blue and gold star flags in the European Union in their gardens. We even snapped the former Prime Minister jogging past one of the emblems last week. Now, the former Tory leader and wife, Kerry, moved into the Brightwell Sortel near Wallingford, Oxfordshire. England is a weird country. The couple who have just welcomed their 3rd child, son Frank, have a $3.8 million property with 9 bedrooms set in nearly 5 acres, boasting a walled garden, moat, tennis courts. You would think with how small land is in England that they wouldn't be able to get such crazy things, but sure. A source said some neighbours are not exactly elated to have Boris Johnson move in. His arrival has caused a kerfuffle. The man himself might say one villager put the EU flag in court among a few others too. Let's hope he sees the funny side. I hope he doesn't. I hope that he's mad. I hope that he is purely frustrated with his neighbours. Why? Because I believe that he should be frustrated like the rest of Europe that's dealing with, well, England that's dealing with food shortages and a whole other inflationary issues, and that the Brexit vote was done for racist reasons, and because, you know, Rupert Murdoch couldn't have carte blanche to do whatever he wanted there because the EU deemed him a democracy threat. Of all things, they called him out for it, and he's like, "No, you got to leave the EU." Unbelievable. All righty. So thank you for tonight. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. I would like to see you come again next week. Thank you for a lovely evening. Make sure that if you're watching this through playback that you leave a comment and let me know your thoughts on tonight's show and any tips for future shows. Thank you. Night, guys.